On this episode of the show, we discuss the leak that turned out to be real from Rolex, all the Watches and Wonders mayhem from 2025 in Geneva, some world record attempts that have actually turned out to be true. Welcome to Scottish Watches Podcast. This is the Watches and Wonders recap, part 1 of 2. There's no chance we'll be able to get through the entirety of the show in just one small episode, but there is tons to talk about. Tons of cool things, some good things, and some not so good things. But the first thing we're going to do is tell everybody to check the show notes, to play along at home. Click the link in your podcast player if you're watching this on YouTube. That link will be in the description and the top comment. Takes you to our website. All the pictures and high resolution, the tech spec, the links to the products, all that information you're looking for that is more supplemental to what we're able to do on this show here is there for the pickings.
We've got lots and lots to cover from Geneva, some big hitters with some big news, both watches and some technology behind it, and also a few less inspiring releases, but it is Watches and Wonders, so we can't have everything good. We have to have some good, bad, and indifferent. So maybe we should dive in at the deep end, that thing that got leaked that nobody really truly believed until it turned out to be absolutely true.
You're absolutely correct, Dave. The big R, of course, Rolex, the Coronet, the Crown, they had something that leaked out, and more these days, it's as if the leaks are done on purpose. You find with Omega, perhaps, I don't know, an ex-James Bond will put something on his Instagram, he'll wear something on his wrist to an event, and then people will say, oh my God, what is that? What's that thing there? We've not seen this before. We don't know anything about this. Well, it turns out a very famous tennis player did something quite similar, and there were various leaks about a new dweller. We've had a sea dweller, we've had a sky dweller, space dweller. That was in the past, but this time around it was a land dweller. And I looked at the mock-ups and I thought to myself, this is a pretty bad hatchet job of an oyster quartz mixed with perhaps, I don't know, an Air King or something like that. And yeah, it turned out to be true. But not just being skin deep, the beauty or lack thereof, depending how you look at this, underneath the dial, underneath the sapphire itself, and encased in almost a sandwich of sapphire, front and back, there is some new technology in there. I read a little bit into it, I asked a little bit into it, I looked at the presentations they had on booth, and it made sense. But the fact that they've not managed to move the needle, as in minus or +2, which is their superlative chronometer rating, better than COS, better than METAS, it hasn't increased that, made it much better. But Dave has some thoughts on it. Maybe Dave, you can tell us a little bit about the watch and what makes it special.
The land dweller, the unexpected, expected, not unexpected thing that came out from Rolex. Some believed it was a bit of a mock-up, some believed it was real. Turned out it was real. Coming in 2 sizes. There are, of course, definitely got heavy oyster quartz vibes to this, although when you do a bit of digging, pre-oyster quartz, there were a couple of models that did lean in towards that kind of designed language, and then of course that led into that period, that tricky period within the Swiss watch industry where quartz became rather prevalent. But we're back into the modern day and we have this final part of the sea, land, air trilogy that so many brands do lead into. But of course, what do we know about this? Well, it's very much 1970s inspired. It's an integrated bracelet. It is removable, but not really designed to be removed as such. And we've got quite a few different materials. I did mention at the top we've got the 2 sizes, 40mm and 36mm. They're both 9.7mm thick, so definitely on the thinner end. I think that kind of works with both these sizes. And you've got this flat Jubilee style bracelet on there as well. You can have steel, you can have dual metal, you can also have rose gold, and I believe platinum in the options as well. You can have diamond set bezels, you can have fluted bezels, lots of options in there. I can't decide whether I do or don't like this yet. I definitely don't hate it. Can't decide whether I actually quite like it. It's one of the more interesting Rolex releases, in my opinion, for the last few years, because it's doing something slightly different to what is available across most of their main range. So you've got steel with white gold bezels, you've got 18 karat rose gold, or ever rose as they call it, and of course you've got platinum. The honeycomb dial, I do actually quite like. I think that works quite nicely, leaning into the 1970s vibe on this as well. But for me, the big news is the new caliber, that being the 7135. That caliber, personally, I think has a bit of a technical tour de force. Ricky mentioned it's not moving things forward, although when you're already operating in big serial industrial production of movements and can operate at that -2, +2 category, you're already absolutely at the top of your game when it comes to mechanical calibers.
I'll explain what I meant there. It's when BMW bring out the new M5 or the new M3 and it costs more, it looks slightly different, but the performance hasn't changed, or it's perhaps gone backwards after all the ingenuity and intricacies are brought in. Car manufacturers get away with that because emission standards change and it's always an uphill battle. But becoming more coherent when it comes to timekeeping, there's nothing pulling it back. So the fact that it still is a -2 and +2, and that is not marketing BS. When I bought my first Rolex from an AD, it was +1 second a day for the entirety of the duration that I owned it. When I got my second Rolex, it was +1 second a day, and it didn't change, it didn't deviate. So it is genuine. It's just, I thought they would have tightened things up because when Grand Seiko move and push the needle forward, they actually do increase things. Like spring drive is super incredible these days. There might be some news on that one later on in this episode too.
What they've done here is a technology that has been around but has proven extremely difficult to produce in huge volumes on an industrial scale. So maybe my vibe is that they're going to introduce it, they're going to maintain that already super accurate timekeeping, but I think in the future that will potentially allow them to then push things forward. Don't take too many steps in one go, maybe as some brands have done over the last couple of years in different areas, but do something super safe. This is Rolex we're talking about, not known for taking huge risks. They've probably already put many years of investment and research development into this. They want to release it into the wild. Stick with the system that they know, and then I think over the next few years we'll see where this technology can actually take us.
Do you think the reason they brought this out is maybe not so much on the thing I'm thinking of, and that is accuracy? There is obviously developments with power reserve, and there's also more anti-magnetism. And then something I read into was with this new system, there's less friction, kind of similar to maybe the escapement technology Daniels was working on, later Roger Smith. It could be those kind of things that have maybe improved and we'll see the benefits of as an owner with limited servicing compared to more frequent servicing.
Well, yeah, there are lots of upsides to this. Obviously, this caliber's running at 5 hertz, which is, what would normally be seen as to be in the high to very high kind of frequency areas, but this is going to be their standard, so to speak. Well, they've definitely upped the game there. There is definitely benefits to being able to run at higher frequencies. Usually the downside is power, but they seem to have overcome that because, yes, this is a significantly more efficient design of escapement technology. I think this is, let's give you a whole kind of cadre of upsides to it. Then over the next few years, I think we'll begin to see more additional benefits that they can bring in when they feel the time is right from a safe and secure point of view of they've got enough knowledge of that caliber in the wild, in volume, to know what they can definitively do without risking, as you've mentioned, the kind of security of timekeeping that you get with a Rolex. Everyone knows this -2 +2 thing. They know that their watch will generally keep to that. They don't want to upset the apple cart and suddenly have something go a bit left field in the consumer market with their watches. So it's an amazing bit of technology. The biggest bit for me was quite a cool watch, which I don't often say about Rolex, but yeah, quite a cool watch, and definitely a big kind of step forward technology. They've even been so proud of it that I believe this is one of the first, if not the first watch with a steel case that has a display case back from Rolex. So they're obviously themselves pretty proud of it because they're willing to show it off behind that sapphire crystal case back on there.
I think the PRX led the field, led the charge many years ago with bringing that case shape back. Numerous parties have come late to the party, Rolex the latest, and even Vacheron with the 222 a number of years ago. They brought it back. Tudor were known as the heritage re-edition brand, and Rolex are kind of catching up. It doesn't offend me. I did think it was a bit of a meme. Would I want to buy one? Probably not. If I was looking to get a Rolex these days, potentially. The watch that came out and made the biggest splash the last time would be the Skydweller. 2012, I believe that came out. Changed days since then, but maybe one of those in blue. Maybe that would be the next Rolex that I go for. Now that I've got the house sorted out, I've got the marriage sorted out, I've got the car sorted out. But I did pick up a new watch, and if you're watching the YouTube video, you might see it on the wrist. We'll get to wrist check shortly. But we are going to, I don't know, take it back a little bit. You know, a little bit of hip hop, a little bit of funk. So maybe we should get our seat and jump around.
Well, yes, I think you're getting at jump hours, as in the jump around, Ricky. But before we jump to that, we should just quickly finish off. There were many more Rolex releases. We could talk for a whole episode about it, but we're not going to do that because we're not the guys that just talk about Rolex. We will quickly finish off with that model saying it ranges in price from just under 14,000 Swiss francs to well over 100,000 Swiss francs, depending on materials, whether or not you like diamonds. You probably won't get one for quite a while because it's probably going to be one of those. Well, yes, you will wait if you want one. Anyway, jumping hours. That seemed to be a bit of a running theme amongst many brands at the show.
This is a strange one because I remember one of the standouts in Hollywood well over 2 decades ago now was you get twinned movies where two would come out around about the same time. Olympus Has Fallen was one. Back in the day, it was Deep Impact and Armageddon. Exactly the same theme and premise, slightly different movie, and appearing at the same time. And this year we had, as we talked about, Nico Leonard, who we actually bumped into numerous times at the show. We were under the impression he was banned, but he turned up. He actually did a presentation live in the auditorium, so that turned out to not be the case. But he rushed over to us, and you can never tell if you're going to be commended, patted in the back, or slapped in the face when Nico's around. But he came over to say thank you to us for talking about his watch in a positive light. And that's something we do. We stick to the truth in our guns about things. We don't, if something is negative and then there's a positive story thereafter, then we'll comment on both. We don't take sides or anything like that. And that release that we Austin Powers a little bit, it was genuinely really good. And then we saw it in real life. We saw it in his wrist. He took it off and he slammed it in Dave's wrist. I got to look at it. Dave got to play with it. It is really, really good for the money. And a lot of people took him to task because it was inexpensive and he's supposedly the big expensive watch guy. But he talks about G-Shock as being the greatest of all time, God tier. So that is not the case. He was extremely humble this year. He was on his best behaviour. Perhaps he had put some noses out of joint last year, but things were on a pretty even keel. And we actually got to speak to the folks at Bremont, including Davide Serrato, later on in the show. So we'll explain more about that. But yes, jumpers, everybody was on it.
We obviously had Cartier doing a little bit of their thing when it came to the jumping hour. We had Bremont with a couple of interesting jumping hours. One which was definitely not my vibe. I'm sure it will be some people's vibes, but not mine. The other, on the other hand, actually quite piqued my interest, I have to say. Funky looking. Definitely not what you're going to expect from Bremont, but in a good way. And, of course, we had that watch from Nico himself slapped on my wrist. Turned out that that was also very good in the pictures, even better in real life.
The part that got me was when I opened it up and looked inside the clasp, and it had engine turning all across the inners, which is something that costs extra money because it's very difficult to do that by machine, especially to this level. So I'm pretty sure somebody had a physical hand in it. And again, the price point of around about €1,000, it has to be commended what has been put together. And obviously Nico is getting a little cut out of that. The guys that make the watch are making a cut of it, and then there's the production costs of it. So it is a bit of a win. And I think it's still available just now to order, although there is a short window. So if you do like it, check the show notes. We're not going to dwell upon this one because that wasn't really a Watches and Wonders release as much as Nico was parading it around the place, getting other people to check it out. Let's talk about the other guys. Let's talk about perhaps Cartier, because we're going to chat more about Bremont when we caught up with them later.
Cartier have pushed out, now this is where David's going to do that whole thing with pronunciations, a Tank Gauchets, not sure. Anyway, this is exactly what you would expect from a Tank. A pretty classic shape that has obviously been in the Cartier offering for many, many years. In and around the turn of the century, in and around that, I think, 1915, 1917 type era. And I think around the 1926 mark was when this model first debuted. A jumping hour module. This is being made available in a few of the precious metal materials in a 18 karat yellow gold, a slight rose gold coloration, and platinum. It's actually a very simple, how would I describe it? Subtle watch, in as much as it is very much a rectangular watch as you would expect from a Tank, with a fully brushed finish on there, with the hour marker and the minute disc just showing in little windows. I don't know what it is about jumping hours. I kind of don't like them, but also like them a lot as well. Sometimes they're almost too simple for me, but one thing Cartier does extremely well is simplification in watches to the nth degree, where they just have a certain class to them. The kind of class that David doesn't have. Not really a David watch, although he wouldn't go amiss if someone was to, again, maybe donate one to the cause. But that said, this definitely garnished a lot of attention at the show, being marked by many people as the release of the entire show. In fact, even above that Rolex release, everyone was talking about this. And of course, it did lead to quite a few other brands obviously had got the memo. What that memo was or when it came out, that is beyond me, but many of them must have got the memo because jumping hours definitely seem to be a bit of a running theme. And I think over the next 12, 18, 24 months, we might see a few more brands jump in there. That's not to say that they've not been out there in the range over the last few years. Obviously, there have been a few out there. Fears have also done a jumping hour in the past. Isotope, the guys, they did a jumping hour many years ago, but it never really quite caught on like this one has caught on. Don't think this is really going to be in Ricky's wheelhouse, but you never know with Ricky because sometimes he comes out of a bit of the left field and decides he likes something. Ricky, is this a you watch or not a you watch?
This one ain't for me, dog, but there were a couple of jump hours over the last few years we have spoken about on the show we've got to see in person. We've seen them from all kinds of places, from the low end, £1,000, $1,000, like Nico's watch, all the way up to the lofty heights of Gerald Genta and most recently Gerald Charles. We had Federico on the show just around about Watches and Wonders time. He had been recorded ahead of schedule. We'd released it as the show was underway. And when we went to the booth, I actually thought that was going to be a watch we would be most enticed with, and it wasn't. There was another watch, a less expensive watch, me and Dave both absolutely fell in love with, which should not have happened. We'll get to that when we talk about Gerald Charles later. Yeah, jump hours was definitely the movement technology, the complication of the moment at Watches and Wonders, and it just makes me think how much talk goes on behind the scenes that all these releases came out at the one time. But we'll leave that one hanging, and what we'll do now is the wrist check, because we almost forgot to do it. And the whole reason, if you're watching this on YouTube or you've seen the thumbnail, I am wearing almost day glow, what would you call this, Diner Rod Orange, is because I picked up a watch when I was over in Geneva. Yeah, the watch fast is over, the house has been bought, the marriage is done, the car is purchased, and it's time to try and rebuild the watch collection. And I started off over in Switzerland, catching up with the guys from Archinaut. The Black Badger was nowhere to be found. He was stuck underground in his little lair doing whatever it is Black Badgers do. But I managed to catch up with Rob, and I got my latest creation on wrist. These are unique pieces because everyone is completely different. You've heard Black Badger, James Thompson, on the show numerous times, either in his own guise with cohorts such as George Bamford in tow, or the guys from Archinaut who have been creating amazing wristwatches. I have picked up my first Archinaut. It is obviously going to be a Fordite because that is our signature piece, and there have been various iterations along the way where the Fordite has been cut in many different facets. It could be at an angle, it could be straight through, and the one I got is more the classic Fordite look. If you don't know what that is, quick primer, it's where you take lumps of dried in paint from a repair body shop where a car has gone in, been spray painted, the next car comes in, a different colour of spray paint ends up on the wall, and you get this almost like a tree trunk, lots of concentric circles of different colours and variations of paint. Black Badger gets a hold of that, he chops it up, he creates dials, he cuts it in certain ways, he grinds it, and these beautiful masterpieces become apparent that you just didn't know existed in there. They're hidden gems, and he creates watch dials from them with his company Archinaut. Him and a couple of guys are behind the scenes there. And I didn't really know much about the brand beyond having seen the pictures, having had them on the show before. But it's when you get a watch on the wrist or in front of you that you start to get the nuance of where the design philosophy actually is embedded. So all the details will be in the show notes. Do check it out. But I will say there are various facets to this watch that I never knew existed until I got the thing in hand and on wrist. The finishing of it is exemplary. This is a €3,000 to €3,500 watch plus taxes, and the fit and the finish is incredible. We're talking to the levels of micron that you find from the big heavy hitters. It is just absolutely sublime. The way that the different coloured straps attach to the watch head, there's no gaps. You couldn't get a wisp of paper in between there. And the part I didn't actually realise myself was the crown. The crown, it's unlike any other crown I have seen, and it was so cool. I actually had it round the wrong way until James told me off, and then you look at the back of it and it looks like they've used a laser to engrave lots of details, almost like a periodic table on the back talking about Fordite. This one, I've been waiting quite some time on the website by email for the mailing list drops to say we've got a new one out, a new one's been created, have a look at this design, have a look at that design. This one grabbed my attention and I was within minutes messaging to say, that's the one I want, put it aside, let's figure out how to get a hold of it. So I picked that up when I was over there in Geneva, and the reason it's on this cool funky strap is it matches my new car. But enough of that, we'll talk about that in the future, but we'll get to all the cool stuff I've been up to recently. There's far too much watch content. And Dave's going to flip it around. He's not going to go orange. He's going to go kind of aquamarine, almost turquoisey.
Well, officially peacock, but of course I'm over in Switzerland and I have just picked up something new as well. And what have I picked up? I've just picked up the latest prototype of the Orage Revolution 3. This is the watch that is quite literally upside down. So this is in fact the front of the watch. We've now got the latest time-telling disc prototype. It doesn't have the numbers, but if I zoom in, you can tell it has got the little minute markers now embedded in there onto the time-telling disc. So that's something that lots of what we're asking for. Can you tell the time on the front of the watch? Previously the answer was yes, but only to 5 minutes. But now in fact we've managed to work out a way to do it to the nearest minute. This is far from finished yet, but we are getting there. And of course, on the case back, you have the all singing, dancing, fully featured hours, minutes, and seconds display that allows you to hack the watch and set it to the very precise time while utilizing that tool that will be coming to allow people to play around with the regulation of their fully mechanical watch themselves. So yes, I'm quite excited about it. It's pretty cool. I think this is something that's a bit funky. And yes, of course, I am biased because I do work with these guys, but nonetheless, this is the kind of watch that would float my boat if I was not. And Ricky, you don't, so you can be a little bit more dispassionate about it. This is possibly something you might quite enjoy as well.
That could be a very cool wedding gift from Mirage. Hint, hint. But that is really nice. I'm looking at it for the first time here, and Dave got in there just at the vinegar strokes to say he works for Mirage, because we like to disclose these things, and we're going to keep making that joke until it gets old. Yeah, that is pretty cool, and there's a number of things Mirage related that are happening behind the scenes that everyone will want to pay attention to. Dave's been earning his keep. Let's just leave it as such. But other people have been earning their keep over in Geneva, include the guys at Montblanc. We did a live webinar, we did one last year, and we didn't offend them enough for them to say go away. They actually invited us back, gluttons for punishment over there. And we had a fantastic time on the last day, at the last possible conceivable moment of the show, to actually do another live presentation. We'll get to that later on, but the first thing we did when we actually got to Geneva, to PAL Expo on the first day, let me give you a bit of background here. It has always been like herding cats. Day one, actually day before day one, we would turn up and we would have to get there to sign up, to get our press passes, to get all the stuff organised, accreditation, and then we would get on a bus the following day, come in the morning, and it was just a crunch point of so many people trying to get through the press turnstiles, vying for attention of security to get through, finally get through, rush to your first appointment at 9 a.m. And it almost felt as if people had forgotten the show was on. Because when we turned up, we made a beeline for the entrance, we got through, we went up the escalators, and we were in the show. There was no dicking about. Even the scanners, they've got airport x-ray scanners just in case you're taking something bad in the way, you're trying to take something out the way you shouldn't be leaving with. It was so flawless, I thought we'd made a mistake.
Normally there's a bit of a queue, shall we say. Quite a lot of people trying to pile in all at the same time. The security on the first day, whilst secure, or maybe needing a little rehearsal because they probably haven't done it for around a year. But no, smoothly through, like the smoothest transitions at an airport that you could possibly ever dream for. So we were in before we knew it. And it felt just a little quieter than we were expecting. Although it did start on a Tuesday, and we felt that maybe the reason was that lots of folk were going to be arriving on the Tuesday, whilst we'd made the sensible decision to arrive on the Monday so that we could be in there first. And of course, as Ricky mentioned, the guys at Montblanc had trusted us, entrusted, maybe more than trusted, entrusted us with the jewels of their presentation, that being the presentation that goes out to their VVIP clients and retailers around the world who could not make their way to Geneva. But we thought we should do our homework, something that we're both bad boys. We're not usually very good at our homework, so we thought we would do our homework and visit Montblanc. On the very first day, on the very first appointment.
Absolutely correct. This time around, we decided to jump in super early to get in there to get hands on because we were allowed into the fold. We were given information ahead of time, but there's only so much you can glean from a web chat, a PDF file, or a presentation. We wanted to get the watches, we wanted to get hands on with them, and I'm very glad we did because it allowed us time to build our own thoughts. Have a think about what we saw there, have a think about other watches we saw over the next couple of days before we did the live broadcast. And it allowed me to think of things that I actually wanted to express during the performance. And Simon, consummate professional as always, led from the front. Dave was perched like the angel on one side, I was perched like the devil on the other shoulder. And we'll go into more detail about that if you missed it. I'm pretty sure we're going to be releasing an episode where you can catch up on it, but we'll get to that later on. These timepieces, I knew ahead of time. There was one that I wanted, and I wanted to see what it was like on the wrist, and I'm so glad that I actually got to experience it on the wrist, because last year we actually had to wait a couple of months at the Geneva boutique to get hands-on with some of the releases. We actually borrowed them at Geneva Watch Days last year, but yeah, just incredible what these guys were doing, and people put them down. People don't believe that Montblanc is a professional watch player in the industry because they're known for so much more. Well, their watchmaking prowess, Minerva, other things of that ilk, absolutely first class, stellar performances, the case technology, the loom technology, the fact that they offer existing customers that perhaps bought one of the releases over the preceding number of years the opportunity to upgrade for a minimal fee. I think it was around about $100 or less if your watch was going in for repair or service or anything like that, a small supplemental charge to bring it bang up to date with the latest and greatest. And Dave's going to explain what that is.
Indeed, so they had a few releases. One of the big pieces was the Geosphere 1858. Now, this was a model called the Mount Vincent. If any of you know, they've had some tie-ins with some climbers, and they talk about the 7 highest peaks, that being the highest peak, like Ben Clymer. Not Ben Clymer, no, I like that was quite a good joke. That was not too bad for a Sunday for you. We're recording this on a Sunday for anyone that's interested. But yes, this is the highest peak on each of the 7 continents, and Mount Vincent, which is the highest peak in Antarctica, was the focus of this watch. You had a titanium bezel, you had a special composite case on there as well, had carbon fibre in it, but many other materials as well. Can I remember exactly what they were? No, but there was lots of different materials put in there that gave it an almost marble effect. In fact, so much so that it literally looked like a piece of marble, but of course without any of that weight that you would be expecting with marble, because this thing was super light. They even had the outline of Mount Vincent in the flank of the case, directly opposite, of course, the flank with the crown, that was done in superluminova, which of course glowed in the dark. That was something that certainly piqued Ricky's interest. I'm not normally a guy.
Usually a woman.
No, only on a weekend, Ricky. But yes, I'm not normally a person. We'll go with that. That leaves you scope for jokes minimised. Yes, I'm not normally the person that goes for things on the flanks of case, but this one was completely flush, integrated into the flank. It wasn't one of those little plaques that looks like it's been riveted onto the side. Therefore, made it very acceptable in my book. Pretty cool little touch. Of course, you've got the zero oxygen technology in this model, something they've began to introduce over the last few years, typically though only seen in the more premium pieces within their range. So that means that they purge all of the air out of the movement with nitrogen. It helps with things such as anti-fogging. If you're up at very high altitudes, you can maybe sometimes get a little bit of fogging in the glass. That's something that is, something that would be common to all watches, but also helps with the lack of oxygen, minimizing degradation with oils and materials within the watch as well. We'll come to that when we talk about the IC range, about what Ricky was talking about, it being expanded over the range of customers that maybe bought watches before. This is a super cool watch though. The Geosphere has become a bit of an icon of the range of watches within Montblanc. Ricky, this one definitely caught your eye. Lots of little features about it that you quite enjoy.
The semi-transparent, almost looking through ice, I suppose that's what they're trying to emulate the look of. That's what caught me. It's not a white ceramic, which is obviously something I'm quite into, as everybody knows. It got me, and the pictures made me want to check it out in real life, and getting it on the wrist, feeling the way it sat there, and it didn't feel like plastic, it didn't feel like sapphire, it was an amalgamation of the two. Really liked it. The price point for this new technology, you would expect if it was ceramic, if it was sapphire, if it was something like that, you'd expect it to be in the mid-teens to maybe up to 20k. This, I believe, was sitting around about 9k, which for the tech is brilliant. And from a watchmaker with this kind of prowess, again, something to be commended. And we have been questioned in the past about why is it you talk about Montblanc? Well, the reason is way, way, way back in the very beginning of the podcast, before Dave was a permanent feature and he was occasionally coming on, we were finding more about him. He introduced me to David De Serato, who was the guy at the helm of Montblanc. He came up to a Red Bar event in Edinburgh and we got up close and personal. We chatted about the brand, the history, where things were going. And it has been a solid lead up from that day forward where I've got to see every evolution, the different technologies, the different materials they've used. They've had lime gold, they've had this, that, and the other. Fantastic stuff all the way through, leading up to what they're doing today, and are continuing. So yeah, it is brilliant. And the fact that we've been asked twice now to do a live webinar with them means it must be reciprocal.
And you mentioned the price. In fact, you over-egged it slightly. 8,100 Swiss francs is the price point of this watch. We also haven't mentioned a couple of other little Easter eggs. The case back. Something has happened within Montblanc. They definitely have had memos about make the case backs exceptionally good, because they are using a laser technology that interacts with the titanium material on the case back to give you those different colours. And it is almost verging on photorealistic interpretations on their case backs now. Huge amount of technology packed into this watch. Definitely slightly more left field than other options that are out there from some of the brands that might be regarded as having higher status within the watch wearing world. But honestly, have a look at a couple of the Montblanc pieces, especially the Geosphere. It's a world timer. Yes, the base movement is running on a Sellita SW300, but you've got their in-house module that runs those two globes, one at 12 o'clock, one at 6 o'clock, that allows you to do day-night, allows you to do world time, act as a GMT timer as well. Something just a little bit different. Excellent looking watch in my opinion. And this kind of blue, translucent colorway that they've used for it, again, something just a little bit different. Not seen in too many watches. A bit subdued, but at the same time, just has a bit of life to it.
Well, let's stop the talk about Montblanc because we do have that recording. We preserved it for the ages and we will edit that up. And sometimes it takes a while due to the sheer volume of information that we accumulate during big events such as Geneva Watch Days, Dubai Watch Week, and of course Watches and Wonders. When we do recordings, we then have to get all the news out to everybody. Then we have the follow-up. Then we have the people that we work with. Barbara Palumbo. Sarah was with us as well. She came across for her Watches and Wonders premiere event. They're going to be coming on to the show to give their experiences because they went to see different things. They've got different thoughts on it. And obviously, they bring a different perspective, being involved in, first of all, the auction industry when it's Sarah, and watch journalism, gemology with Barbara. So that is to come. Then we're going to have 3 episodes we recorded back to back to back on the final day we were there. And that is with Chris, the CEO of IWC, talking all things Brad Pitt, including giving him a bit of a dingy when he emailed in asking about something. Chris thought it was spam and ignored it until the PR department kicked his ass. We're going to talk about that, the Formula One movie, the latest releases from IWC. We're going to talk about Montblanc, the webinar that we did and recorded live with Simon, and the guys at UN who decided to keep quiet, work on something for half a decade, and then release a world record-breaking watch.
The guys at Montblanc were going up the way. The guys at UN were going down the way. Notice I said UN because I'm not falling into the trap of mispronouncing it or being accused of mispronouncing it again.
Ulysses Nardin.
Ulysses Nardin. Ricky, you should learn how to pronounce these words if we're going to talk about these lovely people on the podcast. But yes, they decided to go down the way. Instead of focusing, as they did last year, on their grinder technology, which is incorporated into their very revolutionary escapement system.
And also your favourite app?
Well, not this week. Anyway, we're talking about their diver, or to be more precise, their air diver range.
Ah, Dave, you didn't get the memo. It's Dive Air. Their Dive Air watch.
Dive Air watch. Oh, nice. I like how you did that. But yes, this is one of, if not the latest, highest performing, fully featured dive watch on the market. We have an episode with them, so we're not going to spoil too much, but a couple of little features about this watch. It weighs in at only 52 grams. That includes the strap, not just the watch head itself. We have a caliber in there that is skeletonized, but designed to be skeletonized from the very outset, weighing only, if I remember, 10.1 or 10.3 grams for the complete caliber on there. Revolutionary multi-part case utilizing titanium and carbon fiber materials. They thought about aluminum or aluminium if you're actually spelling it correctly, but no, they decided not to use it because they also wanted this watch to be able to go to 200 meters in depth and also withstand impacts of up to 5,000 G. So yes, this is a watch that can definitely do the talk when it comes to depth. It can do the hits when it comes to the amount of impact and punishment it can take. Is ultra lightweight. In fact, so lightweight that when you put it on the wrist, you almost literally forget that you're wearing it. It has my favourite colour and what is becoming Ricky's favourite colour, bright orange incorporated in there. That is the strap. Of course, if you're not so keen on that, you do have a white strap with it as well that allows you to tone it down just somewhat a little bit. This is an exceptionally cool watch that does everything that a dive tool watch should do, whilst very much leaning into the haute horology world, and also coming in at a price point that is, albeit higher than an entry-level watch, not as punchy as you might expect for such a highly featured watch. I believe in and around the 35,000, 36,000 Swiss franc mark. I absolutely loved it. I think Ricky loved it as well. If we could both have stolen it, we would have. But as we mentioned, lots of security at that show.
Well, Dave thinks I would probably go for this watch, and I'm conflicted. I love the brand, always have done since I first got into watch, as I've said in the show before. It's a company, it's a technology manufacturer, it's people that have been at the forefront for decades, if not hundreds of years. Marine chronometers back in the day, all the way through to 25 years next year of the Freak. So there was no Freak talk this year whatsoever. They're keeping that in the bag for the following. This one, I understand, having spoken with Matthew at great length before, during, and after the show, including the recording that you guys will love, because a standard recording with Dave and myself and somebody is a little bit different from the norm. And that's what the guys at UN said to us after we concluded the podcast. They went, you guys just do it differently. So yeah, I'm glad that people finally realise that we are Scottish and we do things our own way. But the watch itself, I cannot commend enough the amount of ingenuity that's gone in, even when we drilled down, and we won't spoil the episode that's coming out, but the questions that we were asking about, well, how far did you push it? What happened? Tell us the problems and how you overcame them. And it was explained, well, we tried to skeletonize it just a little bit too much and everything just caved in itself when it was pressure tested. Because I think they were saying it was 175 kilograms per square inch or something like that when you get down to 200 meters underwater. And that titanium holder that is the movement itself, is the watch itself, that had to absorb that amount and then at the same time take a whack to the side at 5Gs. And they were playing us videos in the actual booth showing what that meant. They had a live punching machine, you know, those things you find in nightclubs and amusement arcades where the ball comes down and you punch it and it gives you like a rating. They were doing that to explain what 5,000 Gs actually is. So brilliant stuff, great technology. And this was something that was commented amongst people at the show and afterwards for the intricacies, the ingenuity, the creation process that was involved in this, and the testing. This is Richard Mille level stuff for standard money, for Armin Strong money, for Moser money. So you're getting so much bang for buck on the wrist. It's not limited edition. It'll be limited production because, again, they're so close to the wire creating these things. The yield levels must be extremely low, and the amount of ingenuity with the watchmakers and the people that are actually at the bench creating these, they can't just get any Tom, Dick or Harry to put them together. So one to watch, and well done for completely 180ing the entirety of their display at Watches and Wonders compared to last year. A lot of people rinsed, repeated. These guys didn't. This was completely new, completely different looking, and they have to be commended for that.
And in fact, it was so different because they launched one watch. That was it. That was the entirety of their offering. The whole booth was focused in and around this Dive Air. I got it the right way around that time. But yes, their whole booth, the whole story, the narrative, everything they did was around this one release. They also had an extremely good coffee purveyor on their booth as well, which we did definitely take advantage of, along with the only booth that got it. It's tiring walking about those show floors. So they had energy bars to give away. That kind of saved my bacon on a couple of occasions.
Wasn't just energy bars, they had their own branded water, which must have had something in it because it had a slight citrusy taste. I managed to abscond with a number of these items, including their sticker packs. That was one of the best goodie bags because there's always swag at these shows, and their bag was one of the best ones. Again, orange in colour, which is fantastic. You're about to find out all about that after we deal with Watches and Wonders. An absolutely amazing display. They didn't over egg it. They didn't have 1,000 releases. Some of the brands this year we didn't go and see because in previous times they have just unleashed a catalogue and it is like a machine gun. Here's a watch, here's a watch, here's a watch. We don't get to learn, we don't get to enjoy. With these guys, it was all about one timepiece. So well done for that, and check out the episode coming soon. And another brand that didn't over egg things, but when we turned up in their booth, I didn't know what was going on, because you had all these air-moving devices in rows upon rows, and we are talking about Moser, of course, and I saw Edward at the front, and I looked up, and I saw all these machines sitting there, and I just said to him, what's going on here? Are you guys doing a collaboration with OnlyFans?
Yes, because it was definitely a row of fans that enveloped you as you watched in, and it was all about coming in for some fresh air, or as they would put it, a different take on how to do things. Because as we know, Moser are the brand that if you can do it differently, they will definitely do it differently. They had announced just on the very first day of the show what they'd been doing, and I think it caught a few people off guard as they have gone down the route of stone dials. These stone dials, though, were of such excellent quality in terms of how the stone had been cut. It almost looked like they weren't real stone in some areas because there was no inclusions, no faults, no marks on them whatsoever. They had got the most perfect cuts of stones. And of course, it's Moser, so not your drab, boring, dark colourways, but definitely much punchier, brighter colourways. I'm not even going to get in to start pronouncing the names of them. In fact, we had a bit of a running joke with a couple of the staff there about how do we actually pronounce this name. But yes, they had bright blues, they had lemon yellows, they had some tangerine orange colourways in there, and they were doing lots of polar reverses of the different options. I absolutely loved these. Not normally, personally, am I the biggest fan of stone dials, but this one, almost because they didn't look like stone dials but were stone dials, kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Ricky, there was one or two that maybe floated your boat as well?
One in particular stood out, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was a purple degradé, which is a fume style, almost purple on the outside, dark purple to a creamy tinge in the middle. Almost like, as we like to say in the show, a rolled out sweetie wrapper, but done to exquisite and exemplary standards because of course it is Moser. And that was the Endeavour series, I believe, and it was an enamel styling. Not crazy money because those models aren't way up there in the upper echelons of their tourbillons and such like. Other ones that stood out, yes, the ones you mentioned with the different colours, the limes paired with purples, and the cross-contamination of different colours. Some of them looked very acidic, some of them looked almost Chernobyl-esque, but it was just everything about it. There was nothing that was left to centre. There was no craziness this year. We didn't have a Swiss Alps. We didn't have, for instance, a Nature Watch. We didn't have any Vanta Black. But Moser don't release everything in the one go. A lot of these brands, when they come along to Watches and Wonders, they've got old style thinking because it used to be Baselworld. This was the one opportunity that retailers and press got once per year to meet up and see what was coming out for the following 12 months. That's not the case anymore. So Moser are only drip feeding a few things just now. They were talking a little bit about Formula One, what they've got going on there. Asked the question, how have things been? That has been now 12 months or more since the collaboration with Alpine. How's it been? What has happened? What have the developments been like? And true to form, they were open and honest and said they have done what they expected to do. They've opened the brand up to far more eyeballs, not just within the drivers, the teams and the followers, but the people that actually watch the sport live on television, on the internet, or read up on it afterwards. Having Moser appearing on the vehicles, on the livery, in the actual roundups on television, it has made its mark. So well done for actually thinking ahead and getting ahead of the game there a little bit. Now, who are we going to talk about next? Should we talk about the little brother that maybe likes to play with Transformers?
Otlong's the other brand that sits within the overall family group that, of course, also has Moser in there, but they have their precision engineering area, which obviously deals with more of the engineering background and the watchmaking area with the business. You have Hotlands, the brand that likes to be even more crazy than what Moser does, because of course we've seen a few insane watches over the years from them. Back at Geneva Watch Days in 2024, we saw the watch that was probably my favourite watch of that event, which was the, how do we describe it? It looked like a bar of soap, but it was also styled around a very classic 1950s, 60s radio. Absolute insanity of a watch. And they've gone and done it again. They have quite literally a watch that we weren't allowed to use that word that might be trademarked because there's lots of films about it, but it was a robot, a 3D printed titanium robot.
Would you say it was robots in disguise?
I mean, I think that would be a very good way of talking about it, because this was a robot, not a robot, that may or may not have transformated into something else.
I wouldn't want to ravage the story on the sound waves that we're broadcasting upon.
Yeah, I mean, we could record this on a cassette tape that maybe transforms into, oh, I said the word, can't say that word, bad boy. But yes, well, there we've gone and said it. And yes, it was a small titanium watch. Small, that's actually the wrong word. It was a small robot made of titanium that became a square, could be put on your wrist. On your wrist, it was definitely not small, but it was possibly one of the coolest things of the show as well, because you could unclip it from the housing or the casing of the strap that put it on your wrist, and you could turn it into a little desk clock. Of course, Hotlands, well known for various different interesting calibers. They have some jumping hour type scenarios, they have tourbillons, they have lots of more premium, slightly left of centre calibers that they offer. And this was an amazing, cool looking little desk clock or mantelpiece clock that could also be worn on the wrist, almost looking like a telecommunicator from another sci-fi series as well. Very cool. Definitely check the show notes out, because it's the only way that you're going to understand what we're talking about. Outside of that, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may well see it flash before your eyes.
Indeed, and something that flashed before my eyes, which was lucky because I was actually late to the appointment. When you're at Watches and Wonders and you're going between all the different booths with all the different brands, they give you around about 15 minutes as one ends until the next one starts. But that's not enough time to decompress, ask your questions at the end of the presentation, and then hotfoot it across PAL Expo, because I should probably check the step count on my phone of how many steps we put in, because I believe last year on one of the days we travelled around about 13 kilometres walking between brands across one day at the show from around about 9 AM until 8 PM. Pretty sure it's going to be very similar this time around, and we're carting with us all the equipment in a roll along. But yeah, next up was Chopard, and it's a brand we stop by every year because they do great things. Last year they did a really cool dial, one of my favourites, and they also did a really ugly kind of skeletonized thing that looked as if it was half-baked. Definitely not one of my favourites at all. This time around, they had a really high frequency movement, faster than Zenith, faster than the Grand Seikos that you come across, and it had a really cool material, but the price was a little bit punchy.
So Chopard have definitely got a bit of a vibe within the high jewellery world. They do lots of watches that are encrusted with diamonds and various different stones, but over the last few years the Alpine Eagle has definitely been pushing into the integrated bracelet sports watch territory. Obviously they've been using some interesting materials over the years, really based around either titanium or their special steel. I can't remember exactly the name of it at this point in time.
Lucent steel, maybe?
Lucent steel, that's the word we're after, Ricky. Yes, a material that's, I think it involves a lot of recycled steel, but also has got a very good ability to be polished to a lovely luster. But they have introduced a few more materials. One of them is the first ever time it's been recognised in platinum, that being the Alpine Eagle 41 XP CS Platinum. Centre seconds, I think it's also, is that the first time they've done a centre seconds? Can't quite remember, but yeah, there was some story about centre seconds and small seconds. This one is, of course, in platinum. It also is associated with a fairly punchy price tag, as you would expect. The one that caught both my eye and Ricky's eye is the Alpine Eagle 41 SL Cadence 8 HF. This is the 8 Hz high frequency model in a whole combination of fancy techie materials. You've got a ceramized titanium case. You've got grade 5 titanium virtues and the hardness of 1,000 Vickers.
How hard would 1,000 Vickers be? I don't think they'd put up much of a fight. I mean, is that as hard as 1,000 Ministers?
I don't think we're allowed to do that. That probably gets us into trouble with various segments of communities.
You just can't make good jokes anymore. Everyone gets offended, right? Dave, talk about watches.
Vickers, we're talking about the hardness that comes from the Vickers tanks, of course, one of the first purveyors of tanks in the world, that being World War I with the British when they brought out a Vickers tank that decided to not work very well, but it was the beginning of something that is still a thing apparently. Anyway, back to watches. They're also using ceramized titanium for parts of the movement on this. That is going to bring the costs up considerably. It is COSC certified. It runs at 8 Hz, which is outside of quartz watches, atomic watches, or spring drive, some of the highest operating frequencies that you'll see on anything mechanical within the world of watches for sure. It's got a really nice grey, black patina, little pops of orange, little orange markers on the rehot ring, a kind of off-orange second hand, a nice textured rubber strap on there. This is a watch that absolutely floats my boat in terms of aesthetic. The price point, not so much. If I remember rightly, Ricky, I think we were in the low six figures, but still 6 figures for this watch, which definitely put a little lump in my throat. But it was very nice. We got to handle it. It was also super light, 100 meters water resistance, so should hang tough as a watch, which I would like to think you would expect of a watch like this at that price point. I think both of us loved the watch, loved all the tech about it, definitely didn't love the price point.
I believe it was around about 120k was the figure that was banded around, which made my balloon knot tighten somewhat, so that came off the Christmas list. But it was a cool looking watch, dropped down in my estimation, unfortunately, by the date round about the 4 o'clock. That was absolutely massive. But apart from that, really cool. They were talking about their Happy Diamonds collection, various other things, cross-pollination with the jewellery side, the LUC Chopard stuff. It's always nice to see what they've got coming up, because it's another one of those brands that maybe people don't give a lot of attention to because they're seen as a jewellery brand like Chanel or Dior. And we talked about a really cool Dior recently on the show. But we are at the end of this episode. We have so much to talk about, but we have so little time. You're just going to have to come back on Thursday because we are going to be back. And I don't know if it's going to be myself and Dave. I think this one will be just me and Dave because we have a lot to get through. Then we will bring our cohorts on. We'll have Barbara, we will have Sarah. We might even bring the 4 together as one, as a culmination of the end of our Watches and Wonders chat. But there is much more to talk about. We've barely scratched the surface of the first day we were actually at the show, and there is much more to tell. But we will get past all that and we'll get down to brass tacks as soon as we can on Thursday's episode. So check the show notes. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Scottish Watches. Drop us an email. We have lots of emails to catch up on. I've had some computer gremlins, as you probably know, over the past couple of weeks, leading into over a month now. Hopefully that'll be remedied. I can put a little bit of time into things now we're back from Geneva, and things will flow a little bit easier. So if you've got any thoughts, queries, questions, conundrums, criticisms, positive, negative feedback, info@scottishwatches.co.uk is the only email address you want to use. So that is us. And again, email us if there's a specific watch, brand, thing you heard about happening over there and you want us to elaborate on it. Perhaps we saw something and our grey matter fails us, we've not talked about it. That'll give us the opportunity to bring it up and express it to you. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you again soon.